Hello, welcome once again to another show of Civil Discourse Now.
It's a special show, Mark.
It is a very special show. I'm Mark Small, my co-host is Paul Ogden.
Thank you.
We are shooting today from Big Hat Books in Broad Ripple. That's on the north side of Indianapolis, 6510 Cornell Avenue. Cornell runs parallel and about 3 or 4 blocks east of College Avenue, and Big Hat is just about 2 doors north of 65th Street. Cornell runs parallel to the Monon Trail, which is like a greenway in Indianapolis if you're watching this in Ecuador or Bolivia or someplace.
Or the Moon Colony.
They aren't on the Moon Colony. Well, actually, they are on the Moon Colony, but they kept that secret. Big Hat Books has a really excellent selection of books here. But one thing that Liz, the owner of Big Hat Books, wanted me to point out, and this is a locally owned bookstore, it's a locally owned business, it's the kind of thing that we want to really encourage. Although if she becomes profitable and does a public offering, Bain Capital will probably buy her out and sack her assets and everything like that. But World Book Night is being staged on April 23rd, 2012. What World Book Night is, there were like 30 titles of books, and there are a bunch of people on here, a bunch of really neat writers, amongst whom is, well, Stephen King has a book, John Irving has a book, Barb Kingsolver has a book. She's a classmate of mine from DePauw. There are 30 titles on here. And what you do is you sign up at worldbooknight.org by February 1st. And then on April 16th, you pick up 20 books of one of these 30 titles. And then just give them away on April on April 23rd, World Book Night. So you'd throw a party at your home and give the books away. And you pick out one of these titles, get that many copies, 20 copies of one of those titles, and then just give them away. And it's World Book Night, which is really kind of a cool idea to get people to read. And so go online, and that is at worldbooknight.org, and see what titles are on there, and then if you like one of those titles, sign up, and you can come in here and pick up the books after you've ordered them through worldbooknight.org, and then you give them away. So that's, now, today our show, this is being shot on January 28th, 2012. Our guests, Pat Andrews, former candidate for City-County Council here in Indianapolis from the Democratic Party. Matt Stone, who's been on here a couple of times previously. He's a quasi-regular. I wouldn't say he's quasi-normal, but he's quasi-regular. Former candidate for City-County Council from the Libertarian Party here in Indianapolis. Paul, do you want to describe what we're doing today?
Well, what we're doing today is we're going to talk about what is commonly referred to as the Super Bowl ordinance, in particular the regulations dealing with signs, which are quite restrictive as I understand it.
Yes. In order to get the National Football League to agree to have the Super Bowl in Indianapolis, where apparently really nobody wanted to come because it's a northern climate in the winter. It's not known for being particularly artistic or swinging or happy or anything like that. Happy. We're all happy.
Beer-centric.
They threw everything at them. I mean, the NFL doesn't have to pay taxes. They get to.
Let's clarify. You say that they don't pay taxes. We talked about there being a non-profit off the air.
Oh.
But they don't have to pay taxes on hotel rooms. They don't have to pay taxes when they ride or get a rental car. They don't have to pay sales taxes.
The teams don't have to pay taxes.
People
on their
associate with the
paychecks.
NFL.
And see, and
Right.
the thing is, all those people though are from such highly impacted low economic groups that I can understand why they need all those breaks.
And this is your sarcasm.
That's my sarcasm.
Okay. And we're talking a $1 billion or a billionaire who owns the team.
Yeah.
Owns the teams. He doesn't have to pay tax here, but if you and I go to the game, we have to pay tax.
Well, actually, as I understand it, the tickets and the concessions, you will pay your tax, but the NFL gets to keep it.
Okay. All right.
And see, that's one thing we learn about in our city government here is just how we can be taxed, and we don't even get. I mean, somebody else gets to take the money.
Well, let's be clear. The tax breaks were mostly done at the state level by the state legislature. But yeah, you're right. These fees or whatever, these fines are just another form of taxation that the city, the Department of Code Enforcement for the most part.
I'm
is
not 100%
imposing.
sure they can keep all the fines that they get. Knowing them, they've probably given that away too.
Well, and I want to know,
Well-
and as just a momentary sidetrack, where do the Pacers get, what do they get out of this? I mean,
They get to renegotiate their contract right after the Super Bowl
Right.
is over and get even more, you know.
And honestly, since
I was
the Pacers
worried
have
about
actually been doing
Well, you should be worried
decently
about it.
recently, they probably have a bit more of a ground to stand on than the
Right.
Colts, who won 2 games.
well then,
Let's try to outline exactly what the sign ordinance is. I think we have an expert here today, Pat, to explain how the sign ordinance works. So before we get into a long, detailed discussion of what it is,
Well-
but while she's doing that, Paul will be making a sign. This is just like
I'll tell
when
you.
I was a kid, we'd watch Captain Kangaroo,
Mhm.
and he'd say, pull out your construction paper. My parents never bought me any construction paper. I always wanted construction paper. They never bought it for me. Anyways, Captain Kangaroo would say, get out your construction paper, and then Bunny Rabbit would screw it up, or Mr. Moose would come on and tell him how to do things right, and then Dancing Bear would just come in, but we all know now Dancing Bear probably kind of was a little off the wall, you know. And then they'd make whatever it was. Paul today is going to make a protest sign. Paul, have you ever made a protest sign before?
when I protested the Vietnam War and the Korean War.
No, it's,
Korean War.
so you've never made a protest
No,
sign?
I've never made a protest. I'm
Okay,
not aware.
well, the one element that's missing is intoxication, and we won't be while we do this. It always helps in making protest signs to be intoxicated at one level or another. What is it you're going to say on your sign, Paul?
Well, it's going to be a political sign, which, as we know, is different than a
And-
commercial sign.
And we'll get into that in a little bit.
And I'm thinking about Mayor Ballard, no tax dollars for NFL Super Bowl.
Okay, well, I don't know about discussing Mayor Ballard's
Is that a
colon,
quote
but that's...
from Mayor Ballard?
No, it's not a quote. I will not put them in
I
quotation
think
marks.
that is pretty close to a quote. There wasn't supposed to be any tax dollars.
Oh, that's a very good point. He did say that at some point, and that seems to be lost.
And a person that you've agreed is an expert just corrected you on a point.
That's true. And that doesn't happen very often that I'm proven wrong.
No, and just like the U.S. Postal Service declared that this man is not, and there's no question, he is the Santa Claus. You've just been declared wrong on it.
I've been declared wrong.
So-
I didn't
so-
know I was walking into any of this, so
That's happened.
that was innocent on my
Yeah,
part.
and
Okay.
we've changed.
Now, Pat, tell us about the signs.
Okay, where you said it, the sign, we're talking about the Super Bowl ordinance itself today, but where you said that the sign portion is restrictive, I'd like to also say that on the other hand, it's also open season on signs in Marion County. Our ordinances have some restrictions on what can be used as a sign, like there can be no building wraps, there can be no projections on buildings, that sort of thing. But all of those can be waived for the Super Bowl by a single individual in code enforcement,
Okay,
Adam Collins.
does he have a title?
He, I believe, is,
Deputy Director?
no, he does permits. I think he's the legal, I'm not getting the title in my head.
There ought to be some magic
He has a
title.
normal, his everyday job has to do with being a legal reference point for code enforcement on permits.
Okay. And also to be clear, it's not, the restrictions don't necessarily apply to the entire city. There are specific zones that have special provisions.
The, okay, we have layers on the Super Bowl ordinance, and trying just to keep it as clear as possible.
Okay.
I believe that the sign portions can be, that normally apply, can be waived by this one individual anywhere. There are, what you're getting to now on the restrictions have to do with what are called clean zones. The Super Bowl ordinance also allows the establishment of clean zones, which would be negotiated between, again, this one individual and any group that wished to have an event in Indianapolis. And right now we're talking about the NFL and the Super Bowl.
And that's kind of like in the Indiana statutes say that you can, that sales of beer are restricted, for example, in certain ways on Sundays, except for closed auto racing circuits of more than 1.5 miles length. Well, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is 2.5 miles. And so that's, or for athletic arenas that seat more than 50,000 people, which at the time the Hoosier Dome, it was open. Yeah, so and the special zones that they have are, we're in one right now, it's Broad Ripple. And that's because Broad Ripple, if you're not familiar with it, has more bars here than other areas of
But
the
it's
city.
also outside of the downtown area. So,
Yeah.
So the clean zone for the mile
It's
square.
about a half-hour drive.
Yeah, well, now it's probably about an hour drive.
But-
it's fine.
But the point is, there are some cultural districts outside of the immediate downtown area.
Yeah.
So that's why we have these special zones, so they can be in their own special little clean zone, even though it's not continuous with downtown.
Now, the two other zones are Fountain Square, which is south of the center part of the city by about 8 or 10 blocks.
It's close.
And then Massachusetts Avenue, which is about 500 north, 600 north, along in there, and angles northeast, because from the center of the city, that's where Massachusetts was when they laid out the city of Indianapolis.
So how do you explain Kentucky?
I could never explain Kentucky.
Okay, well, there we go.
So
Okay.
we have restrictions.
Okay, so they can designate, and for the Super Bowl, they have already designated certain areas that have specially restricted signage laws now. You have to ask, if you haven't had a sign in your window for the past 30 days, then you have to go get a temporary permit to post a new sign. And you have to have the permission of this one individual in code enforcement and the NFL if you're in the clean zone.
You get an R next to the Super Bowl there too.
All right.
Well, and so you have to
Well,
get.
see, that saves him from actually getting the trademark infringement because he misspelled it. So
Yeah.
Well,
Let me show
Well,
the
what-
sign for the viewers.
that's
Failure.
Paul's sign.
To plan. I don't have a lot of patience, and I ran out of room. Mayor took up a lot more rooms to
you know,
ballot.
we got a bunch of
No
lawyers
tax
and-
dollars for Super Bowl. For some reason, I abandoned writing all caps.
And you don't have an end of the quotation there. You have
Oh,
open.
It's not a quotation.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh,
Whereas,
there's no tax
whereas
dollars.
my
That's
sign.
what he said.
Oh,
My sign back here now, Pat, is that sign that I made there? Is that a violation of the ordinance in your opinion?
No, because as you've been pointing out on your blog all week and a half, it's free speech. It's
Oh.
political speech.
Okay, but as that ordinance is written in Broad Ripple, without my having called the grand poobah of the Super Bowl ordinance thing, is that a violation?
Say it had Big Hat books on there instead of everything else you had. So it's not a matter of political speech, it's commercial speech.
Yeah, but there's no mention of commercial speech in the ordinance.
It will never be mention of speech when it comes to signs. The city of Indianapolis got in trouble a few years back. Someone posted a huge sign in their yard on the south side that took...
I'm sorry, we're almost at the end of the segment. We'll be right back.